There are people walking through the world right now with headphones perpetually covering their ears, creating the illusion of being occupied, unavailable, immersed in audio. But if you could peek at their phone screen, you'd see nothing playing. The headphones are empty, silent. They're not listening to music, podcasts, or anything at all. They're wearing a prop, a social barrier, a do not disturb sign for their entire existence. And if you think this is just about enjoying silence or preferring peace and quiet, the psychology reveals something far darker. The silent headphones are armor against a world that feels too demanding, too intrusive, too overwhelming. Today we're exploring why some people need a constant physical barrier between themselves and human interaction. And the research shows this isn't about audio preferences. It's about a nervous system that's learned the only safe way to exist in public is to signal complete unavailability. Let me start with research that identifies how common this phenomenon has become. A 2021 study, published in Computers and Human Behavior, surveyed over 3,800 regular headphone users about their actual listening versus wearing patterns. They found that 34% reported wearing headphones with nothing playing at least occasionally, but 11% admitted to wearing silent headphones regularly or constantly in public spaces. For this subset, headphones had become not an audio device, but a social management tool, a physical manifestation of psychological boundaries. The researchers conducted follow-up interviews and found that silent headphone wearers were highly aware they were using the device as barrier rather than for its intended purpose. They described the headphones as protection, armor, force field, social shield. The language revealed that they experienced public spaces as threatening environments requiring defensive equipment. The headphones weren't about what they wanted to hear. They were about what they wanted to avoid: human interaction, social demands, unwanted attention, the expectation of availability. Before we go deeper, you need to understand the neuroscience of social signaling and how we communicate availability. Research published in 2019 in Social Psychological and Personality Science examined nonverbal cues that signal approachability versus unavailability. Headphones ranked as one of the strongest do not approach signals, stronger than avoiding eye contact, using phones, or closed body language. The headphones communicated, "I'm occupied, I'm not available, don't talk to me." But here's what's crucial about wearing them with nothing playing. The signal is a lie. The person isn't actually occupied. They're fully aware of their environment, hearing everything around them, available to engage if they chose to. But they're using a false signal to create space that they feel unable to claim through direct communication. They can't say, "I don't want to talk," so they use headphones to say it for them. The silent headphones are a socially acceptable way to be unavailable without having to assert unavailability directly. Brain imaging studies showed that people using silent headphones as social barriers experience them as protective. When imagining being in public without the headphones, their amygdala activated, indicating threat response. When imagining having the headphones, even silent ones, the amygdala activity decreased. The physical object, despite not serving its audio function, provided genuine anxiety reduction through its social signaling function. The barrier was psychological, but the headphones made it real. Now let's talk about the developmental and experiential factors that create this need for constant social barriers. A groundbreaking 2020 study published in the Journal of Anxiety Disorders examined the backgrounds of chronic silent headphone users. They identified several common pathways. The most frequent was social anxiety with poor assertiveness skills. These individuals experienced social interaction as threatening but couldn't assert boundaries directly. They couldn't say, "I'd rather not talk," couldn't end conversations, couldn't refuse requests for attention. The headphones solved this problem. They asserted boundaries passively. People saw the headphones and didn't approach, didn't try to engage, didn't expect availability. The socially anxious person got the protection they needed without having to actively create it through confrontation or assertion. The headphones did the boundary-setting work they couldn't do themselves. The study found that silent headphone users scored significantly lower on assertiveness measures compared to people who wore headphones only when actually listening to audio. They struggled to say no, to express preferences, to claim personal space. The headphones compensated for this deficit, creating boundaries without requiring the assertiveness skills they lacked. The second pathway was sensory processing sensitivity, or autism spectrum traits. These individuals weren't avoiding social interaction per se. They were managing sensory input. Public spaces are sensorially chaotic. Multiple conversations, traffic noise, music from stores, announcements, people moving unpredictably. For sensitive nervous systems, this is overwhelming. The headphones provided two functions. First, they reduced sound input even when not playing audio, simply by covering ears and muffling environmental noise. Second, they signaled to others not to add additional stimulation through conversation or interaction. The person was already at capacity managing baseline environmental input. They couldn't handle additional sensory load from social engagement. The headphones communicated this without requiring explanation. The third pathway was trauma history, particularly trauma involving boundary violations. People who had experienced invasive relationships, harassment, stalking, or situations where their no was ignored often developed hypervigilance about being approached or engaged. The headphones created a preemptive boundary that protected them from situations where they might need to assert themselves and have that assertion violated or ignored. Let's examine the specific contexts where silent headphones are most commonly used. A 2021 observational study published in Environment and Behavior tracked headphone use patterns in various public spaces. Silent headphones were most common in public transportation, where unwanted conversation from strangers or seatmates was likely, walking through urban areas where panhandlers, salespeople, or catcallers might approach, gyms where conversation between exercises was socially expected, coffee shops while working, where the laptop suggested productivity, but headphones ensured no one interrupted, waiting rooms and lines, where strangers might attempt small talk. The pattern revealed that silent headphones appeared specifically in contexts where social interaction was possible but unwanted, not in movie theaters or libraries where silence was already normative, and not at home where privacy was guaranteed. The headphones emerged in liminal public spaces where social norms suggested potential interaction, but the person wanted to opt out without having to refuse individuals repeatedly. The researchers found that silent headphone users developed sophisticated strategies for maintaining the illusion. They kept phones visible with screens dark or showing paused audio apps. They occasionally adjusted the headphones or pretended to change songs. They maintained the performance of being occupied to avoid being revealed as simply unavailable. The elaborate deception revealed how much anxiety they had about being perceived as unfriendly or rude for simply wanting to be left alone. Research on what psychologists call territorial behavior provides important context. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Environmental Psychology examined how people claim and defend personal space in public. Everyone needs some control over their immediate environment, some bubble of personal territory even in shared spaces. Most people achieve this through subtle nonverbal cues, body orientation, gaze direction, personal belongings placement. But people who struggle with boundaries or who have heightened need for control over their environment need more explicit markers of territory. The headphones serve this function. They're a visible, clear boundary marker that says, this person's attention is not available territory. The study found that removing the headphones, even when nothing was playing, created significant anxiety about territory violation, about losing control over who could access them. Brain imaging showed that having the headphones on activated regions associated with safety and control. Without them, regions associated with vulnerability and threat activated. The headphones weren't just preventing interaction, they were regulating the nervous system, providing a sense of having established protective boundaries in an otherwise boundaryless public space. Let's talk about the social costs of chronic silent headphone use. A 2021 study published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships examined how constant headphone wearing affected social connections and opportunities. The findings revealed significant costs. Silent headphone users reported 43% fewer spontaneous social interactions compared to non-users, fewer chance conversations with strangers, fewer connections made in shared spaces, fewer serendipitous encounters that led to friendships or opportunities. They also reported that people perceived them as unfriendly, unapproachable, or antisocial. Friends and acquaintances sometimes felt rejected when the headphone wearer didn't notice or acknowledge them in public. Colleagues found them difficult to approach for casual workplace interaction. The barrier that protected them from unwanted interaction also prevented wanted connection from forming. The study found a painful paradox. Many silent headphone users were lonely and wanted connection, but their defensive barrier prevented the very connections they craved. They'd created a system that protected them from the discomfort of unwanted interaction, but at the cost of all spontaneous interaction. They controlled their environment so tightly that no new elements, including positive ones, could enter. Research on what's called interaction scripts reveals why headphones are so effective as barriers. A 2019 study published in Communication Research examined the unwritten rules governing public interaction. One strong norm is, don't interrupt people who are occupied. Headphones are universally recognized as an occupation signal. Violating this norm by approaching someone with headphones feels rude, intrusive, worth doing only for emergencies. This creates power for the headphone wearer. They're signaling occupation and unavailability, and social norms enforce this signal. Most people will honor it without question. It's a socially sanctioned way to be unavailable that doesn't require ongoing enforcement or explanation. The interaction script, "Don't bother people with headphones," does the boundary-setting work automatically. But the study found that this exploitation of interaction norms, using headphones as false occupation signals, was creating norm erosion. As more people used headphones as barriers rather than actual audio devices, others became uncertain about the signal. Was the person actually listening or just deflecting? This uncertainty made people less likely to approach even for legitimate reasons, contributing to broader social fragmentation where everyone assumes everyone else is unavailable. Let's examine the specific fears and thoughts driving constant silent headphone use. A 2020 study in cognitive therapy and research interviewed regular silent headphone users about their internal experience. Several cognitive patterns emerged. The most common was catastrophizing about interaction. If I don't have headphones, someone will talk to me. I won't know what to say. It will be awkward. They'll think I'm weird. I'll ruminate about it for hours. The catastrophic chain revealed that the person wasn't just avoiding current discomfort. They were avoiding hours of subsequent rumination and self-criticism that would follow even a brief awkward interaction. The headphones prevented the entire cascade. By avoiding the interaction, they avoided the rumination. The cost-benefit calculation made the constant barrier seem rational. The second pattern was responsibility aversion. If someone asks me something or needs help, I'll be obligated to respond. With headphones, I can pretend I didn't hear. I'm not responsible. These individuals felt overwhelming responsibility to respond to any request or need, unable to prioritize their own needs over others' demands. The headphones created plausible deniability. They could ignore requests without feeling guilty because they didn't hear. The third pattern was control needs. Without headphones, I can't control who interacts with me or when. With headphones, I control my availability. And these individuals experienced public spaces as chaotic environments where they could be approached by anyone at any time. The unpredictability was intolerable. Headphones restored control by making them unavailable by default, allowing them to choose if and when to engage. The fourth pattern was identity protection. When I have headphones, people don't see the real me. They see someone listening to music. There's no pressure to perform or be interesting. The headphones created a role, a persona, the occupied listener. This felt safer than being themselves, potentially available for evaluation. The headphones provided a socially acceptable reason to not have to be anyone. Research on the physiology of wearing silent headphones reveals genuine anxiety regulation effects. A 2021 study published in Biological Psychology measured heart rate variability, cortisol, and self-reported anxiety in habitual silent headphone users during public exposure with and without headphones. Even though the headphones were silent, wearing them significantly reduced physiological stress markers and subjective anxiety. The mechanism appeared to be both the social signal effect, fewer people approached, and a psychological effect where having the barrier felt protective regardless of whether it actually prevented interaction. The headphones served as what psychologists call a safety behavior, an action that reduces anxiety in feared situations. While safety behaviors can maintain anxiety long-term by preventing learning that the feared situation is manageable without them, they provide genuine short-term relief. The study found that chronic users experienced anxiety spikes when asked to go in public without headphones, even in contexts where interaction was unlikely. The headphones had become so associated with safety that their absence triggered threat responses. The users had become dependent on the barrier, unable to feel comfortable in public without it. What started as an anxiety management tool had become an anxiety-maintaining crutch. Now let's talk about how technology has enabled and normalized this behavior. A 2020 study published in New Media and Society examined the cultural shift in headphone use over the past 2 decades. Historically, headphones were primarily used at home or during specific activities like exercising. Public headphone use was relatively rare, and specifically for listening while commuting or traveling. But smartphones and wireless earbuds changed this completely. Headphones became small, wireless, comfortable enough to wear constantly. Everyone had them. Wearing them continuously became normalized. The study found that younger generations, who came of age when constant headphone wearing was already common, were significantly more likely to use silent headphones as barriers compared to older generations for whom headphones remained primarily audio devices. The normalization meant silent headphone use didn't seem strange or antisocial. It looked like everyone else's behavior. But the function had shifted from "I'm listening to something" to "I'm unavailable to you." The technology enabled mass adoption of what was essentially a social avoidance strategy disguised as personal audio consumption. Let's examine the impact on community and social cohesion. A 2021 sociological study published in American Sociological Review examined how increasing use of personal devices and barriers like headphones affected what researchers called third spaces, public areas where social mixing occurs. They found that shared public spaces were increasingly filled with people who were physically present but socially unavailable, each person in their own bubble, protected by devices and headphones. This created what researchers termed alone together, the phenomenon of being surrounded by people while maintaining complete isolation from them. Public spaces that historically facilitated casual social mixing, chance encounters, weak tie connections were transforming into spaces of parallel isolation. Everyone present, no one connecting. The study argued that silent headphones, along with phone absorption and other barrier behaviors, were contributing to documented increases in loneliness and social disconnection. The barriers that protected individuals from uncomfortable interaction were also preventing the spontaneous connections that build community and combat isolation. The personal solution, wear headphones to avoid people, was creating a collective problem: public spaces devoid of actual public social interaction. For those watching who recognize that you wear headphones constantly, even when nothing's playing, who realize you're using them as armor against a world that feels too demanding or threatening, I need you to examine what you're actually protecting yourself from. Are you avoiding genuine threats, or are you avoiding the normal discomfort of existing in shared space with other humans? If you're using silent headphones because you lack assertiveness skills, because you can't say no or establish boundaries directly, understand that the headphones are a band-aid on a deeper problem. You're avoiding the discomfort of assertion by creating a passive barrier, but you're not developing the skills you actually need. Every time you use headphones, instead of asserting a boundary, you're reinforcing the belief that you can't assert boundaries, that you need external tools to protect you from human interaction. If you're using them to manage sensory overwhelm, that's more legitimate, but consider whether complete unavailability is necessary or if there are other strategies for managing sensory input while remaining somewhat available for meaningful interaction. The world is overstimulating, but completely blocking it out prevents any positive engagement along with the overwhelming stimulation. If you're using them because social anxiety makes all interaction feel threatening, recognize that avoidance is maintaining your anxiety. Every time you wear silent headphones to avoid potential conversation, you're teaching your brain that conversation is dangerous and avoidance is necessary. You're preventing the experiences that would show you that most interactions are fine, that awkwardness isn't catastrophic, that you can handle social engagement. The headphones are creating a smaller and smaller world where you feel safe only when you're signaling complete unavailability. You're training people not to approach you, not to see you as available for connection. You're slowly erasing yourself from the social fabric of public life, becoming a ghost who moves through spaces without leaving any social trace. I'm not suggesting you need to be available for every random person who wants to chat. Boundaries are healthy and necessary. But there's a difference between selective availability and constant unavailability. The headphones make you unavailable by default, requiring you to actively remove them to engage, reversing the natural state of humans as social beings open to connection unless there's specific reason not to be. Consider what you're losing along with what you're protecting yourself from. The stranger who might have become a friend, the person who could have offered an opportunity, the brief connection that might have brightened your day. The practice with spontaneous interaction that builds social confidence and skills. The sense of being part of a community rather than an isolated unit moving through space occupied by other isolated units. The silent headphones are a lie you're telling the world. I'm busy, I'm occupied, leave me alone. But you're not busy. You're hiding. You're so afraid of human interaction, so uncomfortable with being available, so unable to manage your boundaries directly, that you need a constant physical barrier between you and the possibility of connection. That's not introversion. That's not self-care. That's progressive social withdrawal disguised as a benign preference. If you remove the headphones right now and walked through the world as genuinely available, most of the interactions you fear wouldn't happen. Most people won't randomly talk to you, and the ones who do, most of those interactions would be brief, neutral, and forgettable. The catastrophic scenarios your anxiety predicts rarely occur, but you've never tested this because you always have your armor on. The research is clear. Chronic use of barriers like silent headphones contributes to social skill atrophy, maintains and amplifies social anxiety, reduces spontaneous connection, and contributes to loneliness even while protecting from unwanted interaction. The short-term relief perpetuates long-term problems. You're protecting yourself into isolation. The path forward isn't throwing away your headphones. It's recognizing when you're using them for actual audio versus when you're using them as barriers and gradually reducing the barrier use. Practice being in public without them sometimes. Discover that most of the time, nothing happens. People leave you alone without needing a signal. And occasionally, something good might happen. A brief, pleasant exchange, a smile from a stranger, a moment of feeling connected to the human world around you. You don't have to be constantly available. But you also don't have to be constantly protected. The world isn't as threatening as your anxious nervous system suggests. The headphones are keeping you safe from dangers that mostly don't exist while preventing connections that might actually help you feel less alone. At some point, you have to decide whether you want to keep hiding or whether you're willing to risk being seen, available, part of the social world, even though that's uncomfortable and unpredictable. The silent headphones say, "Do not disturb." But who are you trying not to disturb? Others, or the carefully controlled, isolated existence you've created where no unexpected human connection can break through? Because life, real, messy life with other humans in it, is disturbing. It disturbs your control, your predictability, your carefully maintained barriers. The question is whether you want to be disturbed, challenged, connected to, or whether you want to spend your life behind headphones, protected and alone.